Good morning all. My name is Harry Holden and I'll hopefully give you an introduction to regenerative farming. And just before I start, I have to mention that we cannot field questions in this particular session, but they can be placed in the Q&A function and they will be answered within a day or so. So where do I start? Well, I'm going to start firstly by getting my slides presented and put up for you. And looking at this slide here, as Paul Hawken once said, the first rule of sustainability is to align with natural forces, or at least try not to defy them. We have not followed this simple message and find ourselves at odds with nature, and it is now time for us either to align or to reap the consequences. According to the United Nations, we have only 60 years of fertility left in our agricultural soils, and we are on course to breach the safe global temperature rise of 2 degrees C by the end of this century, if not long before that. Vast swathes of this country of ours are at risk of flooding because due to our industrial farming practices, we have depleted the soils and destroyed its natural water holding capacity. We have also continued to build on unsuitable floodplains, creating the flooding of private properties and commercial premises, which is only going to get worse with predictions of 30% more rain per annum due by the middle of this century. We've replaced farming practices based on thousands of years of ancestral knowledge with a chemically dependent industrial agriculture, which has degraded the soil, eliminated biodiversity, stripped food of essential ingredients, and enslaved and indebted the farmers to major agricultural corporations. This may all sound like very bad news, but however, at last there is something that makes me very optimistic about our future. Just as the vaccine for COVID-19 opens the way for a bright new future, to the scaling up of organic and regenerative agricultural systems can reverse the damage caused by industrial agriculture. Environmentally focused food and farming systems can improve the social and economic livelihoods of farmers, rebuild soil health, promote biodiversity and clean watersheds, and produce healthy food and mitigate climate change by drawing down and storing carbon in the soil. This graph emphasizes just how much CO2 is present in our atmosphere today, and over the years, how the temperature has followed the rises of CO2. What it does not show is how much of the excess carbon that has already been absorbed by our oceans, which has made them acidify, causing the mass extinction of many species and killing large areas, as we have seen at the Great Barrier Reef. It does not show that to avoid breaching the 2 degrees C ceiling, then this concentration of CO2 needs to be at 350 parts per million, not the 410 that we are at currently. And currently in the UK, 10% of our emissions come from agriculture, and globally, this figure rises to 23%, making agriculture a very significant part of the solution. If only there was a way to remove this carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The great thing is there is a way that we can do it. The solution is the soil, the largest carbon pool of them all, and the only place where all this excess CO2 that is in our atmosphere can be stored. Plants with sunlight and water perform photosynthesis. They pull in carbon dioxide from the air and turn it into carbohydrates and sugars. Some of these sugars are pumped down into the roots to feed microorganisms who in turn use that carbon to build soil. The carbon is removed from the atmosphere. The plants pump it into the soil where it is stored using nature's living technology. Simply using nature's technology, tried and tested over millions of years. And the simple solutions that we always all know are often the best. It has recently been discovered that by applying a thin layer of compost sets off an ongoing positive feedback loop that brings more and more carbon into the soil each year in concert with regenerative practices. So what are those regenerative practices? First off is cover crops. Land not left bare but with cover plants will photosynthesize for a longer period during the year, pulling more carbon into the soil through photosynthesis and providing fodder for animals, rather than buying imported produce to provide food for them. No-till. This disturbs the ground and breaks the carbon cycle, releasing CO2 rather than storing it, whilst also at the same time breaking up the mycorrhizal fungi that create nature's own soil web. Rotating crops. This improves the physical and chemical condition of the soil and thus improves the overall fertility. And using nitrogen-fixing legumes fix atmospheric nitrogen into the soil through root nodules. Reduced inputs. Reduce fertilizer, herbicides, pesticides, and the diesel that you apply them with. The use of chemical fertilizers jeopardizes the bacteria that fix nitrogen in the soil, who are responsible for converting atmospheric oxygen into a form of nitrogen that can be used by plants. An incorporation of livestock. They will fertilize the ground naturally and incorporate forage, probably working on the principle of eat a third, trample a third, and leave a third, as has been shown by bison of North America or the wildebeest of Africa, who are all part of nature's own system of creating organic matter in the soil. And the same situation as these two can be created by mob grazing with cattle. Agricultural soil sequestering atmospheric CO2 is the most hopeful thing that we know of for climate change rather. First is the scalability. We have a huge agricultural system which covers the globe. And if that global initiative can be taken, then on a huge scale, we can be photosynthesizing and drawing CO2 down and putting it back into the soil. Immediate. Most of the science behind how this works has been done. So we're not waiting for something to be designed or built or thought up. Most of the information is available and it can be implemented immediately. Affordable, particularly in these moments where our CAP payments have dissolved, then a carbon credit price of 15 to 20 pounds a tonne for sequestered carbon would be transformational. And the potential to reverse. I can't think of anything else which is being put forward to say that they can actually reverse what is happening in our climate today. And so therefore, by using nature's own photosynthesis, we have the potential and the possibility to reverse what we are doing. And carbon-enriched soils, what do they bring? First off is improved drought tolerance. An increase of 1% carbon in the soil will hold an additional 22,000 gallons of water. If you did the multiplication on the 20 million acres that we have in the UK, you can understand just how much water it is possible that would be soaked up. Only last year in East Anglia, we had a yield reduction of 40% on winter wheat due to the early summer and the soil's been unable to retain moisture, followed by a lack of rain in April. This unexpected weather pattern also left London within days of running out of water because the depleted soils will not hold the water and release it slowly. Water permeability, water held in soil and not running off. Carbon-rich soils will hold water for up to 100 days, whereas current depleted soils will have lost that same water within 3 days. And we can all see that in the water courses close to us. They're always muddy brown. They haven't been filtered. What it is happening is it is just running straight off the top and going into our water courses. Nutritious crops. Much of our Yorkshire flooding is due to carbon depleted soils, which have lost the ability to retain water, causing a fast runoff of water, bringing silt, nitrates and phosphates from the land that overwhelms our sewage systems and pollute our rivers. Nutritious crops are crops that have been fed from a pharmacy. With regenerative practices, we can restore fertility, not relying on chemicals to produce food, but the goodness that Mother Nature provides, benefiting our foods with high nutritional value. And enhanced yields. Numerous examples of farmers who have changed to regenerative practices are enjoying yields which are up to 10% better than under industrial practices. And decreased inputs. Fertilizers, pesticides and diesel make up a large proportion of the farm budget. These can all be significantly reduced, making the farm more profitable, as well as protecting the soil microorganisms that build soil carbon and fertility. I hope that's given you an idea of what regenerative farming is about. And if anything, there are three takeaways that I'd like you to take away from what I've had to say. The first one is that agriculture is a significant contributor to the climate change solution. Just as we must reduce dramatically our use of fossil fuels, we must also reinvigorate the soil and put back the organic matter we have depleted. Secondly, agriculture represents the quickest, most cost-effective solution to climate change. And thirdly, pulling carbon from the atmosphere into the soil using nature's technology is the solution. Thank you very much for listening to what I've got to say. I'm sure that you will have a most enjoyable time at our conference. And I hope that sometime I will meet you and maybe discuss this further. Bye-bye for now.